Today we've got an interview with Dragon Turtle Games, the publishers of this awesome little piece of work. So, Robert, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Robert Mariner Dots. I'm the founder of Dragon Turtle Games and the lead designer on Carbon 2185. I actually have the limited edition copy here, uh, just to have a bit of variety in the video.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's nice. There's only like 60 left. The rest have sold.
Are you, just a quick one? Are you guys still shipping out and stuff? I know that things are.
We are, yeah.
Right.
We are, as of recording this. I don't know how things are going to change, but we're still shipping. We're using a very, very small fulfillment company for our web store, so they're actually able to maintain, social distancing standards and safe working practices despite everything that's happening.
Brilliant.
Which is just luck more than anything. It wasn't planned. It wasn't skill. It was just luck. So we're still able to ship. We're selling a fair amount actually because people are in lockdown. They're looking for something to do.
Yeah. It's actually, I have to say, I really enjoy the game. It's one of those games that
Thank you.
Just works. just works. Does exactly what you want it to do. What is the story behind Carbon 2185? Because it's an interesting idea.
So, for years, I've been looking for an accessible cyberpunk game. A very simple game that let me play out Blade Runner or Deus Ex or any of these things, or Ghost in the Shell in a tabletop form. And I couldn't really find anything that captured the energy of Cyberpunk, because in my mind, Cyberpunk is very fast-paced. So in action, there's quite a lot of investigative sections that are quite slow. But it's quite fast-paced action, and these other systems, Shadowrun and Cyberpunk, and they're fantastic systems. But I don't think, in my opinion, they captured that quick, fast-paced action that you get in the movies. Combat takes forever to resolve. So I wanted a game. I wanted a Cyberpunk game. I wanted to play one, and I couldn't find one. I couldn't find one that suited the play style I wanted. And I would go online and I would say, I want a Cyberpunk game, on Reddit or something, and people would reply and say, oh, we'll play Shadowrun, but you have to remove the fantasy. You have to, rewrite this rule and that rule and rebuild the lore and do new world building. Or play Cyberpunk 2020 and, but you have to do this and you have to accept that it's kind of old-fashioned and the rule book is kind of, the illustrations and whatnot aren't very modern, they're very 1980s. And, the system itself is quite old-fashioned. And I thought, none of this is what I wanted. So I just kind of got frustrated and stopped looking. And a couple of years later, I was playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign with my friends.
Yeah.
And I said to them, hey, why don't we play a sci-fi game? Why don't we do a sci-fi session?
Yeah.
All of you make characters and just kind of refluff the races and classes in 5th edition into alien races and non-magical classes, but we'll use the same mechanics. And I wrote up a list of weapons and armor in about 2 hours, and that's actually pretty much the list you see in Carbon 2185.
Wow.
And we all sat down and we started playing this science fiction session, and within 20 minutes it was a cyberpunk session.
Yeah.
It started as sci-fi, but as a group we all just went instantly down the cyberpunk route. And their names are all in the book under additional design because they did lend a hand in the early days with some of the themes of the game and whatnot. But yeah, that was really fun, and I thought, I'm gonna take this and run with it, and I did. And that's how Carbon 2185 started, really.
Because it's very much, it is a cyberpunk game. We talked earlier on. You talked about it. It's got its influences in Slave. You know what you're getting. You know what you're getting with this.
Yeah, it's like Blade Runner, Deus Ex, Ghost in the Shell, Altered Carbon. I mean, you could recreate any of those in the game.
Yeah, Yeah.
And that's intentional.
It's very. I like one of the things I like about it is it's because you're using open gaming license. It's accessible, and it's that accessibility that really strikes me. It just shines through. It's a brilliant bridge into other sci-fi role playing for people who, the majority of role players play D&D. That's just the reality of the world that we're in, and actually, this is a fantastic bridge into a whole field of RPG that people aren't aware of, or maybe a bit intimidated by, and it's lovely. Was that intentional?
It was. I mean, what we wanted to. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition sold 50 million copies. If it were a video game, it would be in the top 5 best-selling video games of all time. So there's a huge audience, which means that more than half of the players in the hobby were introduced to it by Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and it's as simple as that. And so we've got all these new players, and they're all looking for new things to play. They've played fantasy now, so they're looking for something else. And 5th edition is such an accessible system. You could have a 10-year-old that sit down and play 5th edition and understand the rules within one game. And not one of a super genius 10-year-old, a normal 10-year-old. So I thought it's such a streamlined, simple system. When I started, I did think about making a system, and I got some basic combat rules down, and everything I did, I thought, a 5th edition does this better. All the combat and healing, I thought everything I'm making is done better already. So let's just use 5th edition. And of course, take away the fantasy and the magic, and replace it with guns and that sort of thing. And when you play it, it's very easy, I think, especially for the players of 5th edition, but even for new players. I've played with plenty of new players who found it very, very easy. It doesn't feel like Dungeons and Dragons.
No, not at all.
It doesn't at all feel like Dungeons and Dragons in a similar way that Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto have the same controller setup on the Xbox. They don't feel like the same game, even though you're using the same controls for both. I think it's a very similar thing. It's essentially you're using the controls written by the guys over at Wizards of the Coast who did a fantastic job, 5th edition. Really, really fantastic job. And we built off of that, and we added our own systems on top. Not too heavy, but we did that, and I think that people have enjoyed it. The overwhelming majority of people have enjoyed it.
I mean, one of the things that we talked about earlier on was one of the things I love the typeset, and it seems ridiculous. I love the typeset, and I love the fact that it's not with serif, and it's a little bit bigger. Again, that makes it accessible. It just makes it easier to read. And again,
that was entirely intentional. I'm dyslexic, so when I read a game book, it takes me a lot longer than when I'm reading a novel or a newspaper or a web page, because the font sizes I find are quite small, uncomfortably small in most game books, and the typefaces they use are difficult to read, at a glance. So I wanted the game to be accessible. I've also got vision problems, so I wanted it to be easy to read, very accessible, and of course it's a larger size. And a lot of people have said, you've done that to fill up the pages. That's not true, actually. I did a little experiment, and I took the whole book and I put it down to the kind of size and typeface and font size that you see in a normal, in the 5th edition books I used actually as the example. And across the 284 pages of Carbon 2185, it only came out to 280. Wow. So the difference is minimal. It's just 4 pages across 300. So that really wasn't the motivation. The motivation was for readability and ease of use.
Yeah.
Again, the whole system is designed for ease of use.
Yeah.
Even down to the font.
I think that's the thing. I think, talking to you, so you can see some of those decisions and how they've worked through. So actually, whenever you get to the action, it's just really straightforward. It's not a complicated thing. It makes it move fast. Character generation, there's a little bit more depth to it.
Yeah.
And actually, character generation, you've got the time to do it, and it doesn't break the story up. It enhances the story. So those are good decisions, I think. I have to admit.
Well, with character generation, the first person I ran through character generation was a friend of mine called Scott Langford, who actually wrote some of the subclasses, or co-wrote some of the subclasses with me. Yeah. He's not a designer, he's a hobbyist, but he's got some really good ideas. And he was the first person I ran through character creation. And I knew I was onto something when he had this idea in his head for a character, and that went straight out the window. He started rolling his dice, and his backstory happened in front of our eyes. And suddenly he had been discharged early from his second contract, so he was shafted out of thousands of one-longs of money. He was given a parting gift, which was just a can of an energy drink, for 3 years service and no pay. So suddenly he had this deep resentment for the corporations because over 3 years' work, they just paid him with an energy drink. So he had this character with a deep resentment, an interesting backstory, and of course he kept the energy drink because he wanted to find his old boss and slam it in his forehead.
Yeah. It's really nice. I mean, I like the contract bit. I like the fact that you can end up with nothing to show for work, which is just
almost nothing.
Yeah, almost nothing. There's a lot in it that just immerses you in that world very quickly.
Yeah, most Cyberpunk games you can start fully kitted. You can start with armor and pistols and machine guns and knives and katanas and stuff. And I mean, I challenge you to find Cyberpunk media where that's how the characters start. Look at Case in Neuromancer. He doesn't even have a gun. He has to rent a pistol for an hour. You can do that in Carbon 2185. Look at Deckard. He wears a long coat and he has a pistol. That's it.
Yeah.
Ghost in the Shell is an exception because, of course, she is a property of the police, and you could do something like that if you wanted to. And most Cyberpunk media, you'll find characters start very, very poor, and they either stay very, very poor and ill-equipped, or they climb their way up.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the intention with Carbon 2185. I didn't want people to start fully kitted out with everything they needed, because then there's no motivation for anything. And the whole idea of the game is simply to survive in this world.
Yeah, and I like the fact you can be as an ordinary Joe. I think you can.
Regular Joe.
Regular Joe, and I like that.
Joe. Just a normal guy.
Yeah.
Like I said before, look at Deckard.
Yeah.
He's just a regular guy, unless of course you believe he's a replicant. Then he's a synth. But we actually have pre-gen characters for Deckard, and we have two versions. We have a regular Joe version and a synth version.
It's got.
So if you want to play as Deckard, you can. You can find those on our Discord group and Facebook group. They'll be on the website soon. He's just a regular guy. Adam Jensen from Deus Ex is just a regular guy.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just regular people.
Yeah, but that works in the genre. That's what makes it. That's kind of the point of the genre. Is this? Yeah. This could happen to anybody. This is that world.
Exactly. You could just become. You could end up destitute, and you have to do what you've got to do. You're just a normal guy. Even the illustration is just a normal businessman on his way to work.
Yeah.
And he could suddenly lose his job and his home. And what's he going to do? He's got to survive.
Yeah.
There's no kind of health care or social care in 2185. You have to survive by any means necessary. That origin was originally called Regular Guy from the Neighborhood, but I decided it was a bit wordy.
Yeah. Speaking of the illustrations, the artwork is just incredible. I'll put a few bits on the screen, but there's a distinctiveness about it that when I went in the Kickstarter, and to be honest, that was the bit that hooked me at the beginning. I went, okay, that artwork, wherever that world is, I'm interested in it.
That's a lot of people have said that. A lot of people have said that.
What was the story there? How'd that come about?
I had an image in my head for how I wanted the world to look, and I wanted it to look modern. I wanted it to be modern cyberpunk. Because most cyberpunk you find is 1980s,
Yeah.
But if you look at Altered Carbon on Netflix, or you play the Deus Ex games, or even the newest Ghost in the Shell, it's got a totally different visual style to 80s updated cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Speaking of Altered Carbon, actually, the author of Altered Carbon, Richard Morgan, follows us on Twitter, and he's a fan of the game. Which I don't think he's allowed to endorse now. There's an Altered Carbon role-playing game.
Yeah.
But he did used to be outspoken about Carbon 2185. But he's a good guy. I had the pleasure of speaking to him briefly. He's a nice man. So the look of the game, I had this vision, I had this idea in my mind of how I wanted it to look, and I was listening to synthwave mix on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I see this artwork, and you know how they are. They always steal artwork and they never credit the artists. And I thought that is exactly the look I have in mind.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, the artist was credited in the YouTube description, and it was a man called Klaus Whitman, a Polish man named Klaus Whitman. And I went on his portfolio. I found him online. I went on his portfolio, and I discovered that he had worked on The Witcher 3. He helped design Ciri in that, and he worked on Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah,
did some of the concept art for that. And he's currently working on the new Batman movie. Cool. And I thought, this guy has exactly the look I want.
Yeah.
So I contacted him and I said, hi Klaus, this is my world, this is my game. What do you think? And he was enthusiastic. He thought, yeah, this is great. He said, I want the cover to be a woman looking at the camera, armed and augmented, and I want her to be looking at the camera as if to say, I could kill you, but you're not worth my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, I know exactly the look. And he said, let me draw my fiance. He said, because that's how she looks at me. That's the girl on the cover is his fiance.
It's a slightly worrying insight into his world.
But he did a few pieces for us, and they're phenomenal. We had some other really, really nice artists inside the book. Who did. My sister was one of the artists. She's been with Dragon Soul Games since day one, which is 4 years ago now. We had some Italian artists and American artists and artists from Singapore and all over the world. People contributed, and I was giving them all each other's images, so that the style could be consistent, and the fashion and the weapons that you see could be consistent across all of them.
Yeah.
Which is something I think a lot of publishers don't do, especially indie publishers like ourselves. We're a very, very small company, entirely self-funded from my own bank account. So the artists had this consistency between them. They didn't have any communication between each other because they didn't need to be. But they saw each new piece as it was finished was added to the shared folder. They'd all take a look and say, oh, I can use that gun in my piece. I can use that shirt style in mine. And so this look evolved organically. And I gave them some very broad, strict rules on what was allowed and what wasn't allowed in terms of the fashion, And that's how the art happened, And again, my sister was one of the artists for the book. She did some of the full page illustrations, which I think are fantastic. Of just normal people in the world.
It's the thing that strikes you is that organic feel maybe is part of why visually it looks right, because it's that's the way the real world visually emerges through this influence, and people kind of working together, but not.
Well, that's the thing. I was very sure every time a new piece was finished, I would email all the artists and say, check it out. There's a new piece finished. Take inspiration from it. Take fashion from it. Make sure it's consistent.
Yeah.
And if you take any two of the illustrations, I think we had 8 different artists on the interior.
Yeah.
And they all looked like they belonged to the same world. And those artists had no communication with each other whatsoever. And they were all drawing the images at the same time. It took just 2 weeks for all of the art to be done in the book. Because they were all doing it at the same time. And I was coordinating that. And I was working 12-hour days coordinating that at the same time as writing. And it took 2 weeks. It was a big management job to get to wrangle them all doing it at the same time. But they evolved alongside each other.
So what's next for Dragon Turtle Games? What's coming?
So we're continuing to support Carbon 2185.
Yeah, we've
got one of the stretch rewards, the Cities source book, should be released to the public soon.
Yeah,
which is a source book for London, Manhattan, and Tokyo, and that was written by Darren Pierce, who worked on the Doctor Who role-playing game, and he worked on the Judge Dredd role-playing game. He's a fantastic guy, an English designer like myself. That was written by Ben Counter, who is a New York Times best-selling author. Wrote some of the Dark Heresy books for Warhammer 40K.
All right, yeah.
And it was written by Guy Schlanders, who is known on YouTube as How to GM, a very popular YouTuber. And he actually lived in Tokyo when he wrote that book. And his wife is Japanese and she's from Tokyo. So he wrote the Tokyo section. He made it very, very authentic because he had non-stop references with his wife.
Yeah.
We had initially looked for Japanese writers, but we couldn't find any Japanese writers who had perfect English.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what happened was, we went for a writer who had perfect English, lived in Japan, and had a constant, his wife making sure he made no mistakes when it came to culture, because she wouldn't have stood for that.
No. Yeah, you don't want to annoy the wives.
So that's coming out. We've also got the Fragmented Legacy, which is a kind of a series of missions. We bring out one a month. The first one just released, and those are available for £7, which I think is about $10 on our website. And you get it for 2 different levels. So depending on what level your group is, you can still run the mission. Yeah. And you get it, the maps in full HD, 300 DPI. Unmarked, so you can put those into your virtual tabletops.
Cool.
So those come out once a month. We got another one, we just finished it, that'll be coming out, in a couple of weeks' time. So we've got these monthly missions. As long as people keep buying them, we'll keep making them.
Yeah.
You'll know when people stop buying them is when we say, okay, this is the last one.
Yeah.
And also we have another Kickstarter coming up this year in about 6 to 8 weeks. For a source book and adventure book for Carbon 2185 called Codename Sculptress, which will introduce a new origin.
Cool.
Which will be a mech, a robot. Similar to the movie Chappie. Someone has discovered how to give robots sentience. And of course that has caused havoc.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to play as one of these sentient robots, which
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. Especially they have an ability where they can just pretend not to be sentient, and blend in very, very well because no one blinks an eye and a service droid walking past.
Yeah.
Or a police robot walking along. Everyone just lets them in. Oh, come on in.
So there's a lot more coming for this world. There's a lot more, which is really exciting, actually. So it's, I guess, the thing that really strikes me about it is just that depth, and it just feels as if it's getting deeper, and it feels as if this is a world that's going to be explored for some time. I know, in terms of gamers, it's interesting because it feels as if there was the Kickstarter wave, and then people are starting to be more aware of it. I think it's been a gathering place for the game.
In terms of sales, we made probably about 60% of our sales during the original Kickstarter campaign. Then about a month after that ended, we opened up pre-orders and we sold, more for a couple of months, and then we closed pre-orders and started shipping stuff out. And now we've kind of put it online again, and it's become available for general sale on our website, on PDF and hardcover. And we've got another influx of players. So we've got about almost double the players we had when the Kickstarter ended. So I think we were at about 6,000 copies sold. And each of those presumably has a group. So there's probably about 20,000 players.
That's great.
Which is great. And it's growing.
Yeah.
It's growing, which is really good. And I wanted the world to be... I didn't want it to be a mile wide and an inch deep. I wanted it to be very deep. I wanted there to be more world building. It's very tempting to just write more city builds and say, okay, here's what Moscow looks like. Here's what, Edinburgh looks like. Here's what, Mexico City looks like. It's very tempting to do that. It's very easy to do that, and people would buy them. But it doesn't really add much gameplay.
Yeah.
Now, adding a new origin, and we're adding our own version of cyberspace is coming in, codenamed Sculptress as well. So players will be able to venture into cyberspace, although we're not calling it that, and it's slightly different to how you've seen it done before. But that's coming as well, and we're adding new subclasses and sub origins. We just want to give people more gameplay options.
Yeah.
I think the world is very detailed, and we want even more. We want more detail. We've got a kind of 4-page short story has been written, will be published soon for free. We're having another kind of 6-page short story written and published, just to flesh out parts of the world.
Yeah, it's really, really, it's a fascinating place, and the more you sort of scratch into it, the more you go, that's really cool. I like that. And it's one of those games at the beginning you go, oh, this is Cyberpunk. And then you realize you can put other things in the top of it, but on its own terms, it's very, very interesting as a world. It's been an absolute joy chatting to you. And I says to everybody, be safe and well. And
of course. As we've been saying, stay safe, stay indoors, stay cyberpunk.
Like that.
But so if people do want updates, they can go to our website, which is www.dragonturtlegames.com, and there's a mailing list there. You get the quick start guide for free if you want to play it and you don't have if there's financial hardship, which everyone has at the moment. You get enough to play the game there and a little mission to go along with it, and you should be able to play 3 or 4 sessions with that, no problem. No problem at all, and that's totally free. And of course, you get notified when we release new stuff. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I'll put the link down below so that people can get to it, and that'd be awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and
thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
You too.